Alrighty, everyone, we're back. Welcome to our third part of our Q&A series. As the Q&A series evolves, it's going to get less and less structured. So we had some fairly structured initial Q&A sessions because I got a huge group of like 40 odd questions, and I could look through them and kind of go, oh, these are kind of similar. I'll put them in together, and these are kind of similar. But as we go on, the similarities kind of run out. You might find this is a little bit more all over the place, and that continues as a theme for the Q&A as we continue to go. Hopefully these are still helpful questions for you to look at. I've always been putting in the show notes timestamps as well. So if you're ever like, I don't care, I've heard Phil talk about that, or I know what I think about that, but I really want to know that question, you can look at the notes in the podcast or on the YouTube. And you should be able to find the specific question that you want to hear what I think about that, whatever your reason is for wanting to hear what I think about something. Before we get started, I'll just do my usual, remind you of the Deconstruction Network, a completely free resource to help you connect with other people that are going through deconstruction in your local area. We're fast approaching 4,000 people on that network, and I'm really excited about that. I'm constantly getting messages from people who have met someone in their local area that they can connect with, that they can process with, that they can feel that they have a common journey with, even though maybe they're going in different directions, finding themselves coming to different places. Maybe one's becoming a progressive Christian, one's becoming an atheist. Whatever the direction, the destination, if there is one, the place that we're coming from is something that can be such a huge bond. Someone that understands what it is to come out of a conventional faith and experience all that comes with that, maybe rejection of family and friends, or fear of consequences if you're wrong, and hell, and all sorts of different things that we've talked about many times. Having someone that you can laugh with and cry with and just connect with in real life can be such a huge thing. We all know the power of that after the pandemic, if we're after the pandemic. So yeah, do check out the deconstructionnetwork.com. It's a completely free resource, and a great way to maybe find some people in your local area you can connect with. Rebuilding community is such a key part of recovery and growth for so many people. As well as that, if you want a great online community and you'd like to support what I'm doing, you can do that at patreon.com/Phil Drysdale or phildrysdale.com/partner. Either one works. And you can support what I'm doing. I do everything for free: the podcast, the resources, talking with people for hours on end, helping them process their journey. I do different Zooms and chats and different things like that. As a thank you for your support, to help me keep everything free, to help me pay my bills, as I do so, you get access to a wonderful online community. We have great chats all day, every day about everything and anything, from deconstruction to politics to our pets to family dynamics, whatever it is. We have great conversations, and we also do regularly audio chats and Zooms as well together. And so it would be great to see you in there if you would like to be a part of that. Again, that's patreon.com/Phil Drysdale or phildrysdale.com/partner. All right, let's dive into some of these questions we have, and we'll see where they take us. I'm going to try and get through as many as I can, but you know me, I like to ramble on these. Hopefully my ramblings, they aren't just because I like to say the same thing 10 times over and over, but I'm trying to kind of give you as broad a context to these questions as possible. That, you know, when someone asks me a question, there's a context to that for them, and it's a very specific question to them, but that same question might be rattling around in someone else's head for different reasons. They might also have different ways of exploring that or navigating that. So the way I would chat with you one-on-one on Instagram might be a lot different than the kind of way I'm trying to flesh out these questions on a podcast, because I'm trying to help all sorts of different people that are going to react to these things in all sorts of different ways. And so I hope you can extend to me some grace over that, if I can use a Christian word, I'm trying to kind of hit everything from a few different angles. But the first question we've got is an interesting one, and I get it a lot. And people ask, is deconstruction just an inevitable slow road to becoming an atheist? And to that, I'd say, yeah, sometimes, but also no, it could be a really fast road to becoming an atheist. Or you might become a Hindu or a Buddhist or whatever, you name it, progressive Christian. You might stay Christian, but you might change in how you see things. You might go into a mainline Christian church. You may become spiritual but not religious. You might go into some New Age stuff. You might go into some Wicca stuff and tarot and different things like that. This is, I've said it a million times, the destination of deconstruction is going to be unique to every single person. We're all on a unique journey with our own unique stories, with our own unique makeups. Who you are is a different person than who I am. Your experience of your faith has been different from my experience of faith. We might have a lot of commonality, right? You might hear me talking on a podcast or something and be like, oh my gosh, Phil gets it. But the truth is, while I get it generally, I don't know what it's like to be you going through that situation. And I don't know how you will handle that and what peace and answers you will find to the questions and the turmoil in your life. And so for many people, many people, the answer to the questions that are bubbling up within them, the peace to the turmoil that has occurred around them and within them, is to move towards something like atheism or agnosticism, and step away from maybe a more spiritual position. And yet for many people, it isn't. For many people, they stay within the Christian faith. They desperately want to hold on to their love of Jesus, their relationship with God, their belief in the message and the power of Jesus, and however they might word that. It's going to be different for everyone. They want to hold on to that, but they want to evolve in that. They want to see it become more inclusive, more loving, more compassionate. They want it to be more enemy loving. They want it to be less in and out. And so it's going to evolve and change. I think the one thing we can say about the destination of people that deconstruct is that it isn't where they started. Generally speaking, that's impossible if you deconstruct. A lot of people will say, oh, I deconstructed and I reconstructed back into the same thing. If that's the case, you haven't deconstructed. That's not what deconstruction is. Deconstruction is to change your core values of your faith. And so you can't do that and then people just don't go back to believing something they believed before. They evolve, they grow. They might evolve again and believe something that's similar or compatible, but it's not going to be the same thing. People don't radically alter their beliefs back and forth between two oscillating beliefs. That's not how the human mind works. And so generally speaking, we can say it's going to be different, but we can't say what difference it will be. That's going to be really unique to the individual. And it's also, this is the key, probably not a destination. It's probably not the final step. I talked about this on Instagram last week, I think, and I talked about how one of the big errors in Christianity, in Islam, in Judaism, in whatever kind of static conventional faith you might find, is that it's static. They believe they've found the answer. This is the right answer. We're here. We've got it. We're in. Everyone else is out, whatever that looks like, the language. Of course, within Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all these different faiths, you can have some more progressive and evolved ways of seeing things. So I don't think I'm writing off those religions. I'm just saying, generally speaking, part of being a part of those religions can often be that you think you've arrived. You have found a destination. But of course, we've found in time that wasn't true. And we have departed again. We've moved on. And so it can be really helpful for us to remind ourselves of that. It's very easy as we deconstruct to fall into the idea that we have now arrived. Well, now I've proven Christianity or this conventional form of Christianity is wrong, and I'm finally the right kind of Christian, or I'm finally an atheist or agnostic or whatever it might be. I've finally arrived. That might be true in a sense, but generally speaking, you're going to keep growing. Even if you just keep growing within the framework of what you found, try not to be fundamental and black and white. Try not to fall into this same pitfall that was within you as a conventional Christian. Don't be this arrogant, black and white, dualistic, I have arrived guy or girl or whatever. Don't be that person, because really you've probably not evolved much. You've changed what you believe, but your core framework of how you interact with the world, this black and white, in, out, right, wrong, is still there. And that leads to a whole host of different problems. And I can guarantee in time, you'll either hit some very big brick walls with that attitude and approach, or you're going to find a very rude awakening where you have to grow up and change and evolve. And so try and head that one off at the pass. But yeah, common thing for many people is that deconstruction does lead them to atheism. People, generally speaking, ask this because they're terrified of atheism, right? Atheism is the big bad boy in the church. It's the ultimate cardinal sin to believe that there is no God, and for good reason, right? If you're a Christian and you believe that believing in God is what saves you, not believing in God doesn't sound great on paper, right? But it is what it is, and the truth is, you're not going to become an atheist without believing that atheism is right for you, that atheism is the truth that you identify most with, that makes the most sense to you, that fits your worldview and helps you orient in this world the best. And so it's not that you, without a choice, become atheist, but in another sense it is, right? We don't really have much choice in any of this, right? We didn't choose to start our deconstruction. It just started to unravel. But you're so interwoven in this process. You know, you're not going to choose something that you don't want to do, is I guess how I'm wanting to say that. You know, it's going to be this natural progression if you do go down that path. And I will say, we don't have hard data on this, but I think generally speaking, anecdotally, from talking with thousands of different people and a few different studies I've seen, it's very common for most people that step out of conventional Christianity to hold some kind of spirituality. There's been a few studies out there that throw around numbers. I think one is about 73%, and another one is about 78% of people held some form of spirituality after they left their conventional faith. And so that's a lot of people, you know, that's, 7 out of 10 people, 8 out of 10 almost, that still have some kind of spirituality. Now, they maybe are very agnostic. They maybe don't, I'm not saying they're passionate born again believers or however you might word it, and I'm sure some people step out of conventional Christianity and stay within Christianity. But what I'm saying is people that completely throw every single experience they ever had in their life out, that reject any kind of thing that's going on beyond their own physical materiality, that's probably not the most common position, actually. And so a lot of people fear that, but while it's definitely on the table, nothing gets taken off the table in deconstruction. If you're honest about your process, and if you are honestly questioning and pursuing what you believe to be true, that's going to have to be on the table as something you look at, you question, you evaluate, and it might be that stands up to your questioning and other things don't. It might also be that questioning your atheism, questioning atheism doesn't stand up for you, and you feel that there's a better option out there. Maybe you go into some sort of Eastern spirituality. A lot of people are drawn to Taoism or Buddhism or Zen or Hindu kind of beliefs and ideas. You know, there's so many different options out there that you are going to have to engage with at some point as you deconstruct, if you start questioning. That's just the nature of it. You follow your questions, you see where it takes you. And so, does it always lead to atheism? Absolutely not. But can it? Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. There's nothing on the table of what it can end to. And so, yeah, I think it's just the way it is. It's the way that deconstruction works. So I'll leave it there. I don't want to ramble on about it, but hopefully that answers some of the concepts of deconstruction and the process, and I've answered that a bit more fully than just saying yes or no, because it isn't a yes or no answer really in a sense, because certainly not everyone ends up being atheist that deconstructs. Another question that's come up a lot, and a lot of people message me about this a lot. I said a lot there, eh? Navigating guilt and shame around the topic of sex. You know, a lot of people have, I just keep thinking about how much I'm saying a lot. I don't know if you guys are picking up on that or not. You know, when you get in your own head. So many people find as they deconstruct that sex is a major topic for them. Now, sex is a major part of life, right? I mean, we are hardwired as biological beings to want to procreate, to want to have sex, to want to connect with people that we love and have beautiful, intimate experiences with them. But we certainly have some hang-ups around it if we grew up in conventional Christianity. A lot of conventional Christianity has a lot of hang-ups around sex. You know, there is taboos about, having sex before marriage. There's taboos about, kissing before marriage, and all sorts of different stuff. Someone just came up my Instagram the other day, because I follow I think some sort of purity culture hashtag or something, and they were talking about how their hard rule is that they allow like anything under a 1-second kiss before their marriage, but anything more than that is really dangerous. And of course it was some random woman that got married, like, you know, when she was like 17 and a half, you know, to some random youth pastor or something, and has no experience at all in real world, you know, sexual and relational dynamics, and now is an expert, you know, telling you how to be in a relationship. But, you know, they're sitting there going, you shouldn't even kiss for more than 1 second until you're married. That's the line, because any kiss that lasts longer than a second is a slippery slope, and before you know it, you'll be another teenage pregnancy, and, you know, you'll have 8 STDs, and the person will leave you because they've now tried the milk from the cow, and who would want milk from the cow that's already been milked? That's how cows work, whatever. You know, these things are out there, and, you know, as farcical and ridiculous as they sound today, you know, we look at it and we see the youth pastor passing around a rose and going, who wants this old battered crappy rose compared to this brand new rose, or chewing gum and spitting it out and passing it on and saying, who wants to chew it next? You know, these awful and really redundant and stupid analogies that we can see for what they are today, that carries weight when you're an impressionable 14-year-old and you believe these people have all the answers, and all your peers seem to agree, and it gets into you. It becomes your inner voice. Your inner voice starts to say, well, if you kiss for more than 1 second, you're just a total whatever, you know, harlot, you know, you aren't pure, you aren't honoring God, you're not honoring God with your body, you're betraying your future spouse. You know, all these kind of languages stick. You know, they say that your parents become your inner voice, right? And in a very real sense, your pastor, your youth pastors, your youth leaders, they become your inner voice. And so it's very easy for us to intellectually start disconnecting from the concept of sex being a bad thing unless it's in this tiny little window. That's fine for us intellectually. We can look at the Bible contextually and go, oh my gosh, these people are in the Bronze Age, and we're trying to decide, you know, how sex should be today based on how they obeyed their practices. God, they literally just bought women to marry. That's how marriage worked at that time. Of course, we shouldn't use that as a metric, right? So we've got some a bit more context that we're applying to these situations. We're thinking about these things a little bit more, so we can intellectually navigate that. But it doesn't change the fact that if you used to masturbate often as a Christian growing up, and you felt that pang of deep shame and guilt, you know, once you were past the exciting hormone-driven moment and you ejaculate or you come or whatever, you feel that wave of guilt and shame, and God must be so disappointed in me, and how could I let him down so much? How do I give in to my passions all the time? I'm the worst. I'm such a failure. Well, guess what happens once you intellectually deal with that stuff and then you masturbate? You still have that natural neuro pathway that goes ejaculation, you know, orgasming. That means you now go feel shame and guilt and regret and all these different things. That neuro pathway is burned in. That's going to happen whether you like it or not initially. That needs to be reprogrammed, right? And so these kind of things happen all the time. I talk to couples that aren't Christian anymore at all, or maybe they're Christian, but they completely let go of any kind of notion of sexual, you know, weird purity culture stuff. And some of them say, like, look, we have sex, we're married and we have sex, and yet afterwards sometimes we still feel, or maybe one of them still feels, a lot of shame and you know, regret and guilt, and that's natural. That's because they've gone and orgasmed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times growing up as a Christian girl or boy, and they've been told that to do so is evil and sinful, and God's so disappointed in you. Of course, their body's response to having an orgasm is to feel guilt and shame and regret. Okay, so please, please, please hear me, that this is not, you're not some sort of weird freak, you're not broken. This is really natural, and it sucks and it's shit and it's messed up, but it's really normal. Okay, if you're not experiencing this, power to you, amazing. You know, it's not that black and white that everyone will experience something like this. Some people do just navigate through this fairly easily. But if you are navigating through this, there's a few things that I would recommend. First, I would recommend that you go and connect with people that are talking about this. You know, there's some great people out there. Lauren Scott, Rachel Alba, Brenda from God is Grey. There's amazing accounts out there on Instagram, on YouTube. There's some great podcasts. There's really wonderful stuff out there. I've done podcasts with all of those people, and we've talked about sex and sexuality. You can get counseling or coaching from sex positive embodiment coaches. There's so many people that do this as well. Lauren Scott and Rachel Alba that I mentioned. You've got Jamie Lee Finch does coaching. I'm trying to think, there's so many people that I can picture their Instagram kind of posts or photos, but I can't think of the names off the top of my head. So please forgive me if I'm forgetting you, because there are many out there. But, you know, go check out some of these hashtags. Go check out Purity Culture Dropout or sex positivity and things like that, and try and find some of these coaches. I go listen to some of the podcasts I've done with some of them. I think Rachel Alba has her own podcast. God is Grey has her own podcast and YouTube series. Go watch some of their stuff. A lot of it is to normalize this, to be exposed to talking about these kind of things and navigating them. But maybe it is something you want to look at, to have a coach or a therapist to work with, because sometimes it is that you just need to work this stuff through. You need to process it with someone that's safe. You need to have an expert maybe give you some different practices that you can apply and things like that. And so check that out for sure. A couple of books, Linda K. Klein, Pure, Nadia Boltz-Weber, Shameless. Tina Shermer Sellers is a great person as well for sex positivity and different stuff like that. Her book, Sex, God, and the Conservative Church, is really helpful. A lot of these help us process these things through reading on a page. They maybe help us kind of like they articulate what we're feeling, what we're going through. They maybe give some helpful steps. I know Tina's book gives some really helpful practices to apply to kind of walk through this stuff. And a lot of them give you the history of this and the intellectual kind of side of it and stuff. And some of you are navigating that. And that might be really helpful for you. I'm not an expert in this, right? And so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in how to navigate these things and walk through them. But what I will say is there is hope, that you're definitely not broken, that it is normal, and there's many ways to start healing that in you and to help you move forward in a way that you can enjoy having a sexual ethic that means that makes sense to you, and a sexual practice that is enjoyable, that is fun, that is safe, you know, all the good stuff, healthy for you. And that's what's important, really. And so do check out some of those people, check out some of those books, maybe look at getting some therapy or coaching, but you've got this. You really do, you know, it's going to work for you. And there's many complexities in this, you know, there's different dynamics, you know, maybe your partner isn't going through deconstruction and maybe you want to explore more and they don't. And so there's lots of complexities. I can't even begin to get into all the different nuances of this. And so again, I would recommend reaching out to some of these people for stuff like that. I know a couple people on my Patreon have worked directly with Rachel Alba. I highly recommend her. She's a great friend, an amazing person. And so reach out to her if you would like to do some actual one-on-one kind of coaching therapy with her. She's got great practices. She's got great insights in how to move forward. And so, yeah, I'd recommend her. But all the people I've mentioned are fantastic people. All right, let's keep moving because I'm just going to ramble forever on each question otherwise. Another question that I get, this is kind of funny, but I like the wording of it, so I'm going to read it to you directly. But it's, I want to burn the church to the ground. Is that wrong? And we talked about anger in one of the prior Q&As, and you know, anger is not wrong. Anger is what it is. You feel angry. Any emotion you feel is natural, is healthy, is important. Now, to be lost in an emotion for decades and, you know, forever, and for it to affect how you function in this world well, and you can't live healthily, you know, you're, you know, completely decapacitated. Obviously, that's, you know, not great. So, of course, if you're feeling so angry that you've stopped functioning in the world and you've shut down completely, definitely that's one to really focus on and try and work through. But any level of emotion, whether it's huge or small, I think generally speaking, the best advice you could ever have for working through or for what emotions are there for is they are there to tell us what's happening to us, what's going on, right? If I feel angry, there's a reason. Something's happened and my body is telling me, Phil, you're not okay with this. You're upset. There's something wrong with this. You need to process it. You need to pay attention. You maybe need to change things. You maybe need to change yourself. There's so many different dynamics there. And so if you're burning with rage at the church, if you're angry at the church, the first thing I would say is stop and listen. Why are you burning with rage? Why are you angry? What is that teaching you? Is it telling you, hey, there's something here that I can't live with? It needs to change. I want it to change. Now, that might be some directional stuff. It might be telling you, hey, start a nonprofit that deals with this, or start an Instagram post that starts calling this stuff out. Something like Do Better Church is a great example of anger that is funneled and given direction in a really healthy and helpful way. And so, there's nothing wrong with anger implicitly at all. I think that's a message that a lot of Christians have been given. Oh, you're just an angry person, or you're just bitter, or whatever. Those kind of things are really not helpful. Like I said, you can be consumed with anger in a way that harms you. And so I'm not talking about that. If that's to that degree, I would say it might be quite hard for you to look at that anger and process it. You might want to get therapy and have someone work with you with that anger and how to process it in a way that helps you and is healthy. But generally speaking, observe the emotion you're feeling. Sit with it. Ask yourself questions about it. Why do I feel this way? Why is this so important to me? Does that need to change? Can it change? Here's the other thing. You might be feeling super angry about the church and going, I need it to change. But you can start the best Instagram account. You can start a nonprofit that starts working with people that are coming out of church or highlighting problems in the church. But you know what? You're not going to change the church globally, right? There's still going to be churches that hurt people, that harm people. And that's life, unfortunately, for certainly the near future, right? And so maybe there's something in that as well where you have to navigate that and process that. Maybe you're angry at the lack of power you have. Maybe you're angry at the power dynamics where this church is so powerful and hurts people, but it's so powerful it can't be taken down. And actually you are just a small person in a big pond, a small fish in this huge ocean, and the church is swimming around as a pack of sharks. And you as a small fish feel, I can't do anything about this. I'm so angry. I'm so frustrated. I'm so mad that so many people are being hurt and so much harmful beliefs are being thrown out, that people are taught that they're filthy, rotten sinners, that they're taught that they shouldn't have sex or should be shamed for having sexual feelings or whatever different things that you get upset about. And yet actually there's almost an anger at yourself because you can't do anything. You're powerless in a sense. Now, that's not meant to beat you up and say you're powerless. You aren't powerless. We all have an autonomy and we all can make change. We've seen a lot of things in even just the deconstruction community where we have helped make change. We've called out different movements and things have happened there. We've called out our own, even with in the last week. I don't know if you saw, there was a big hoo-ha about, I won't bother going into names and stuff, and I wouldn't overly focus on it. But someone came out with some new material, but they had in the past been part of a system that had harmed people. And it was maybe great material even, but they weren't the person to release that material. And they found that out and they thought they got a lot of feedback from different people that were quite upset. And they took it on board and said, you know what? Yeah, I'm not going to release this. That's not the place. And so even in that, our voice matters. I think the beautiful thing about that, one of the beautiful things, there's many beautiful things, and there were many frustrating and upsetting things. And I don't want to dismiss that, that there was a lot of people hurt in that process. But one of the beautiful things was it showed us that our voice matters. When we stand up and say, hey, this isn't okay. And maybe someone that has power and privilege, I can speak up as someone that maybe doesn't have that same power and privilege, and something can change. And so, I don't mean to say that you have no power, but I'm saying that maybe that's some of what the anger is rooted in, sometimes feeling powerless. Sometimes the anger that we have at something else is almost some other projected anger as well. It's some anger that we have at ourselves or something else even. And so my point being, if you're deeply angry with the church, that's good, that's okay, that's healthy. Gosh, there's so many reasons to be angry with the church, so many reasons to want the church to burn down. Now, in saying that, these broad strokes we can use, I'm sure there's some great churches out there. I'm sure there's churches that are doing wonderful, beautiful things. I know that in the UK, our government hasn't been the most helpful in social areas of welfare and different things like that. And so we've gone, it skyrocketed the amount of people in our country that have to rely on food banks to survive, which is really heartbreaking and quite terrible, given that that was a very small issue just 10, 15 years ago, and now it's a very, very big issue. There's over 1 million people, several million, I think, at this point, that rely on getting food free from charities to be able to get through the week. And yet the beauty of that system that is revealed is there's nothing good about needing that system, but one of the things that is quite beautiful is it's the churches that are actually putting on that. Without churches in this country, maybe that wouldn't be viable. Or maybe we'd all still make that difference because we believe that helping people is important. I'm not saying that we wouldn't do it, but the point is there's some churches out there doing some great things. I think feeding people that can't feed their families is really important and a very applaudable thing. And so not every church is evil, and not every person in the church certainly is this awful person. But in broad strokes, I definitely can agree that looking across the broad institution of church, I can at times think, God, fucking burn this whole thing down. It's a mess. It's so corrupt. The institutional power ruins everything. Even the good people in these systems end up being a participant in really toxic and unhelpful things. We just need to destroy it and start from scratch, whatever that looks like, right? So I agree that that's not unhealthy. It's not wrong. It's natural. It's part of life. I think it may even be that it's pushing you in a certain direction to make changes yourself, right? And so that's a beautiful thing as well. You might be that you are needing to push for church to change, push for it to be harder for churches to harm people, right? Push for your local government to make some regulations that impact how churches do things. That's important, right? I know a lot of people have made a lot of pushes in the West for churches to have certain things implied as government regulated things. They need to have certain things regarding the area of sexual abuse within the church. And so I know in I can't remember which country it was, I'm sorry, but somewhere in Western Europe, they made it a law that any pastor who meets with people in his office must have a window into his office. And I know many churches in the UK have this, and many other churches throughout Europe have this. I think it's even becoming more common in the US. And so they must be viewable through the window at any time they're doing one-on-one meetings with people. Now, what's interesting is that has directly correlated to a decrease in sexual abuse in the church. And so the fact that people put pressure on the government and said, look, there's data here that says this would make a difference. And then the government puts pressure on churches and says, hey, you want to do one-on-ones? That's good. Maybe you can help some people, but you need to be accountable. And by holding them accountable and by forcing the church's hands, things got better. Now, it's not as simple as that. Not everything can be solved by that. But my point being, angry people putting pressure on the church through government, through social media, through different things, they make a difference at times. And while that might seem like a small difference, in the grand scheme of things, that's a fucking huge difference when, you think about all those lives that may be harmed through sexual abuse in the church. That's a lot of people being harmed in significant ways that have been avoided because of that one simple regulation that's been pushed on churches in certain areas. And so my point being that anger is a good thing. Any emotion you have is healthy and good if you're paying attention. When you're not paying attention, when you allow it just to destroy you and to wash over you and not allow it to inform you of what's going on within, inform you on what you need to be doing moving forward, that's when it can be quite harmful and unhealthy. So it's not a black and white of is wanting the church to burn to the ground good or bad or right or wrong. I don't think it's either in a sense. I think it's a fairly natural and kind of neutral response. It's just what most people would respond with if they were faced with the situation you were faced with. The question is, how are you going to respond to that anger? How are you going to navigate that anger? You might need to get therapy. You might need to process. Maybe your body is telling you, hey, you need to slow down. This was a big thing for you and you need to process it. Don't just brush past it and move on, because the truth is burning the church to the ground might not help. You need to actually do some work here, right? You need to heal. You need to process some of these things that happen to you. Religious trauma and different things like that need to be processed. And so all of that rambling answer to say, listen to your emotions, listen to that anger, listen to whatever it is that's within you. And I think that's a key to being a healthy human in general, in every area, right? Your joy, your anger, your fear, your excitement, your frustration, your whatever. Listen to those emotions. Let them guide you. Let them teach you about yourself and your situations and help you make decisions moving forward. That's part of something that maybe the church wasn't so great at allowing us to be led by our emotions. A lot of people would throw around words like, phrases like, well, the heart is deceitful, and all these different things. And we shouldn't trust our emotions, but what's funny is we shouldn't trust our intellect, or, we shouldn't trust ourselves. And this is part of learning to trust yourself, to know that you know what's best for you on some deep physiological level. Your body knows what's best for you, and you should be listening to your body. Someone else asked, which is really interesting, they asked, what would a healthy church look like? And I thought this is a really interesting question. I had to kind of stop and think about it. So one of the things I do, which, it's not a massively public thing, because it's not such a big area of what I do. I try and focus on people that are navigating deconstruction. But in part of that, what happens often is pastors or leadership teams come to me and say, hey, we're deconstructing and we are trying to figure out, does that mean we just close the doors and walk away? Or, we feel there's some level of responsibility and obligation we have to people that are coming to us and wanting community and wanting to grow and wanting to develop. Is there something that we can do that looks like a evolution of church, that maybe church could grow, could change, could be better? Right? We mentioned do better church, right? It's in the name, do better church, not die church die, which could be a rallying cry as well for some. I'm not even saying that's necessarily a bad thing to want, but many people want the church to do better. They don't want to disappear the church. They don't want to get rid of Christianity. They just want a healthier, more evolved church, maybe a church that they feel looks more Christ-like than maybe what it looks like right now, maybe more Pharisee-like, right? And so I think absolutely, the people I talk with day in, day out, I work with certain leadership teams sometimes and helping them navigate these issues and trying to shape how church could look like for them. And that's going to be unique to the people, right? So, it's going to be very different if the pastor is deconstructing and moves into something like atheism or, starts picking up Buddhism and Taoism or something like that. They're going to find it harder to bring a church with them than a church pastor that deconstructs and becomes a progressive Christian, right? As much as moving from conventional Christianity to progressive Christianity is hard to do and help people go on that journey, it's really hard to help people that are conventional Christians become Buddhist, right? Or whatever. Or atheist, right? That's a harder one to sell. Can we have a church that's an atheist church? Well, there are things like atheist churches, but generally it didn't go Christian church turned into an atheist church. Usually someone starts an atheist church. And so it's going to be dependent a lot on the leaders and the people that are within that church and have power to change things, power to shape things, whether church can look healthy and grow and develop. My wife and I were heavily involved in my community here. We're heavily involved in a church locally here. And we really believed that it could be better, could grow, could evolve, could look more healthy. It did look amazing in so many different ways, and we did see amazing change. But ultimately, there was enough leaders in that church that didn't want to move in that direction and actually decided we want to go back to something that's a bit more conventional, a bit more safe and certain. We don't like a lot of the uncertainty. We don't like a lot of the ambiguity. We don't like that there's many people, putting forward ideas that have very, very different ideas that make us feel uncomfortable. We'd much rather people that we understand and know believe something quite similar and can teach us something in the wheelhouse we're comfortable with. We'd rather they spoke on a Sunday. We'd rather do a bit more of that. If we did a Q&A, one of the things we'd started, which was beautiful, was something called Q&A, but it was very different, where anyone in the room could grab the mic and ask a question, but then anyone in the room could grab a mic and give an answer or some thoughts to that question, and it would just pass around, and the answers were so interesting and so different and so unique, and it was completely different to anything I'd ever experienced, where normally we handpick one or two people to give the answers because we know that their answers are quote unquote right, and we can feel safe with that. Safety went out the window when you had people going, oh, I don't really know why I believe that, I've never thought about that, but maybe this, and it's like completely heretical, or completely different to what the position of the church is, or what evangelical Christianity's statement of faith is, or whatever it might be. And so we did things like that, and that was beautiful. And so I think there's a lot of room for churches to become more inclusive. That you get multi-faith churches now where they, yes, center around, generally speaking, some form of Christian faith, but they welcome anyone of any faith into the group, and to be a part of the group, and to be input into the group. You get all kinds of different models. You get models that aren't so much just sitting in rows and facing one pastor that's going to tell you what to do and what to say, but instead they sit in circles and they discuss and they share, and they have a much more intimate vibe. Of course, those kind of things are much harder to do with a church of 500 people than a church of 10 people, So again, this is going to be very different based on individual churches. But can a healthy church exist? I think in many ways it can. I think a lot of people are looking for a church. If we take to the side maybe some of the more toxic elements, there's some very toxic elements in a lot of the conventional church. No one's disputing that. There's a lot of great work that the conventional church does. I mentioned things like food banks, but you guys know I mention this all the time. The analogy of working with prisoners, or maybe working with alcoholics, or people that have other addictions like narcotics or whatever. Something like church provides stability and certainty and safety. And a lot of people come from very, very hard backgrounds where they didn't have any of those things. They were very unsafe, uncertain, unstable, and they're looking for something to create a bit of stability for them, to give them a bit of community, to help them feel like they belong, to help them feel safe and certain, to give them a support structure. If you come out of prison, you might be much more helped by a conventional Christian church than a progressive one. And there's actually data that bears up on that as well. And so, if you are an alcoholic, maybe you would do much better in that kind of environment than in another one. I think that we can be very black and white on what's right and wrong, but the truth is, as we grow and develop, different things are right for different people. I use the example of just growing up. If you're in first grade and you finish that year, what's going to be right for you? Well, not first grade, unless you didn't learn quite a few of the lessons. What's right for you is second grade. If you did incredible, what's right for you might be third grade. But you know what's probably not right for you? University, right? Or dropping out of school. Probably not the right choices. Going back to kindergarten, not the right choice. There's a general progression in life, and some people, the progression for them, even though we might see it as really unhelpful, we might see it as toxic, and yes, even some of the components, because nothing's black and white, some of the components might really be harmful for them, and those are the things that we need to be calling the church to change. A lot of what the church offers might be the best thing in the world for that person, and they might not be able to grow up without going through that stage of having some stability and certainty and community and safety and different things like that. And so, I think a healthy church looks like the best of what the church can and does do. It cares for the least of these. It supports people. It gives them stability and structure and safety and these beautiful things. That's what a healthy church looks like. But it also requires letting go of a lot of different things. Maybe the extreme dogmatism, the extreme in and out, the extreme exclusion. It looks like letting go of things like homophobia and transphobia. It looks like letting go of purity culture, of, you know, certain toxic beliefs about afterlife and raptures and things like that, you know. So I think it will look different for each church. It will look different depending on who's leading it. It will look different on whether it's possible or not based on who is changing within that church. You know, if people at the bottom are all changing, but you have a top-down structure and the people at the bottom don't vote on who's in charge or anything like that, it's just the pastor picks the next pastor, you know, it's a top-down model. That's not going to change until the pastor starts deconstructing, right? So you're better off leaving and starting your own thing more than likely. And so it's complex, it really is. But I do think that in this world, there is a need for conventional forms of faith to provide people with safety and certainty and security. I strongly believe that, in fact. And I think anyone that has studied developmental theory, which is the psychological subset of psychology of how humans grow and develop, anyone that studied that will probably see that as well. You know, there's no doubt about it that people really, really benefit from conventional faith in a lot of ways. The question is, will they keep growing up or will they stagnate at that stage? And I think many people stagnate at that stage. It was such a helpful and beautiful thing for them. And they see what their prior stage is what they would go back to without this. They don't see that there might be a future stage that they can grow up to and evolve into. But I think, so those are some thoughts on a healthy church. You know, there's so many different things we tried with and experimented in our own church here in Manchester, and eventually we decided that wasn't going to work very well. And, you know, I sat down with the leaders and said, look, is this something you're even interested in? I used to be on leadership. I intentionally stepped out of it because it was, you know, it just felt like hard for the community, for me to be such a vocal person publicly and also be involved in the leadership. I took a very back seat role and just maybe chatted with people and maybe more of a kind of consulting-y kind of like, here's some thoughts that you can think about. But yeah, the leaders said, no, we don't want to do that. And I was like, cool, well, let's not do it. We'll go do our own thing. We don't need a church, but you do. And so you have a church that looks the way you need it. And so we've built our own community and it looks different. And, you know, we still talk about different things. You know, we talk about our faith journeys and our deconstructions. And there's people in the group that are very different. Some have more Eastern ideas, a few atheists, quite a few agnostics. Some still hold to some sort of Christian ideals. I'm trying to think, yeah, there's a couple maybe. And so, yeah, there's quite a broad variety within that community, and it's going to look different for this community than it will for anything that you might find or do. But you'll figure out things that might look helpful for you, and it might be within a church that changes and evolves, especially if you're a leader. I have a few podcasts with different church leaders that have, you know, evolved and grown up and are trying to bring their churches with them or have started new churches. You know, people like Keith Giles, Ollie Baker, and oh God, my brain, right. Keith Giles, Ollie Hall, Jay Baker, Kathy Escobar. If you go and check out my podcast or my YouTube channel and search some of those names, these are people that are running beautiful communities. You know, Kathy Escobar, she runs a church around the concept of the 12-step model, you know, the Alcoholics Anonymous model. And it's very, very much a beautiful thing. You know, there isn't hierarchy, there isn't, it's a really fascinating thing to explore. And so, yeah, check out the podcast with her. It was really fun talking with her about that and just brainstorming, gosh, how would this work? It's possible. I really do believe it's possible for a church to be healthy. All right, what are we doing for time? I'll do maybe one more. Which one should we do? Let's look at this one. You know, someone asked, you know, was this all a waste of time? And that's a big question, eh? Like, my last question is a biggie. But I'm sure maybe you've had moments where you felt like that too. I know I did. Certainly have moments where I was like, have I just wasted years and years of my life? You know, so many years wrapped up. I was a pastor's kid. I was heavily involved in church growing up. I was heavily involved in church as a youth. I went straight into becoming a youth leader. I did young adults leading. I joined a ministry school. I ran home groups. I traveled around the world and spoke in hundreds and hundreds of churches over the years. You know, I gave everything for ministry. I realistically, on some levels, I gave my first marriage to ministry and to Christianity. And it can be really easy for you to step back and start to go, what a waste of time. So much opportunity lost, right? I never experienced being a kid. I never really experienced trying new things and exploring. I was so terrified that God would find me out of line and smite me, right? I never, dated girls, kissed girls, messed around. I never really thought about any of these things. I never, I never smoked weed behind the shed, or, any of these kind of fairly normal teenage things that now looking back, I'm like, that would have been a fun experience. I'm not saying I would have, I don't know, had a lavish life of debauchery or whatever, because frankly, I'm too much of a baby, and I'm so scared of my own shadow, never mind anything else. And so I would never have been the kid smoking behind the shed. I would never have been someone that was in major trouble at school or anything like that. But, you start to question, oh, maybe I should try this. Well, maybe I wouldn't have married my high school sweetheart. Maybe I would have, gone on Tinder and gone on a few dates and figured out who I actually like and what I'm like, and, what works for me. And then I'm in this marriage that I'm not sure I like, and maybe I settled, and, all these things people start asking questions about. You go, gosh, I've given thousands. I mean, some people have given hundreds of thousands over their life, millions, in tithing and church building projects and offerings and guest speakers that you're giving money to or whatever, and not to mention the missionaries you're supporting. And you've just thrown so much, and you think, that's my kid's college education, or that could have helped with relief in Haiti, or something that I now think is more important than a missions trip, or whatever it might be. I could have supported feeding the homeless in my town instead of building a better church building, or whatever it was. So we start to go, oh, I wasted all this money, and then you think, gosh, I spent hours in a prayer closet praying every day. I've spent hours journaling and talking to God and asking God what he thought, and the things I could have learned in that time. I could have read books, I could have been with friends, I could have done different things. I've spent weeks and weeks of the year sitting in church meetings, right? I go on Sunday morning, I go on Sunday evening, I go to the youth group to help out on a Friday, I go to the prayer meeting on the Monday, I go to home group on the Wednesday, and between that and work, I've got no time at all to enjoy my family and to, hang out with mates at the pub. And the truth is, you probably enjoyed all that at the time, mostly. Maybe at times you didn't, especially maybe towards the end, you started to dislike it or something, but you probably enjoyed some of this. But looking back, you think, what a waste of time. I could have done so much more with my life. And especially if you've come to a place where you don't believe in a God, there feels like this isn't even a transferable life component, right? So maybe if you go from being a conventional Christian to a progressive Christian, you can at least kind of go, well, actually, I still believe in this God. I still believe in Jesus. They've evolved, they've grown, but so much of this time has been part of shaping me towards this. But, it's really hard for a lot of us to come to terms with the things that we have, quote unquote, lost out on because we gave everything for God. We gave everything for Jesus. And that's normal. It's really normal to feel like that. And in some ways, it's true, right? In some ways, we have lost out opportunities we might have had. But the truth is, it's impossible to change the past. And you wouldn't be the person that's regretting being the person you were if you weren't that person, right? If you hadn't spent those days in prayer closets, if you hadn't spent those days in church meetings, you wouldn't be the person you are today who's sitting there going, I regret that time. And so we don't know what person you would be. We don't know what experience you would have, right? We talk about, people in very dire straits really need the church and find support in the church and safety and certainty and security. We talked about in the last question, right? So people that are maybe in criminal situations or in really disruptive and unsafe families, or maybe they have addictions, alcohol, narcotics, something like that. They really need the church. Maybe you might have been one of those people, and so there's perspective there that maybe it might have been a hard thing to swallow, that you maybe feel that you've wasted some of these years, but maybe you didn't. Maybe this path would have been a lot less comfortable and less nice for you if you'd gone a different path. Now, I'm not saying it was comfortable and nice for you to be in the church. Hey, a lot of us walking around with religious trauma here was not comfortable, was not great, was not perfect by any means. But I'm just saying we don't know what a different path would have looked like. We only have the path we have. And I've learned over my time processing these things is that wanting to change the past only causes us suffering. We can't change the past. The past is what it is now. And so part of this process is coming to terms with that fact, coming to terms with the fact that the past is unchangeable. it's the future. It's this present moment that we have power in. We have present moment power to change the future. And so the past is what it is. It sucks, it's good, it's complex, it's a bit of both, it's a bit of everything. And so we have to just walk forwards with it, right? And to me, the only time that I waste the past is when I try and ignore the lessons it has for me. And when I throw out with the bathwater the baby, right? So when I lose great things I learned in that time because I hate the whole time. The truth is, much of the time I spent in the church, while I resent a lot of it, while I feel a lot of it was really toxic, so much of it actually taught me really great life skills. I actually used to be, many of you know I'm slightly on the spectrum. I struggle a lot around people. I really struggle with sensory stuff. There's so many different dynamics to that. But one of the things that I really struggled with was people and getting on with people, understanding how people felt, understanding my own emotions, understanding their emotions. And the truth is that the church really helped me with that. It exposed me to more people, but it did it in a really safe and friendly environment, and people were really kind and generous and gentle with me. They were really compassionate when I didn't understand their emotions, and they really helped me understand my emotions. And so actually, in a lot of ways, I got more support out of that than I might have got elsewhere. I don't know if I'd just made friends at school and gone to the pub with those friends, if they would have been able to help me in the same ways. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. I know for me, I was quite a pariah at school, so maybe not. I didn't have that many friends, and some of the friends I had were deeply dysfunctional. And so I personally look at that and go, probably not. But we just don't know what the different past would have looked like. But what we do know is we do have a past that we need to look at, and we need to grieve. What was unhealthy, what harm was done to us. What we missed out on. It's all healthy to feel regret and shame, regret and feeling a longing for that and feel a grief for that. That's healthy, and it needs to be seen and acknowledged. A bit like what we're talking with anger. Look at that emotion and go, why am I so sad about this? Why do I feel so much regret? Feel that emotion, process that emotion, write about it, sit with a therapist, navigate it, allow it to shape you moving forward. But also look back at the past and go, what in this was helpful for me? And, how do I redeem some of this stuff? And even if it was unhelpful, how do I redeem that? I'm not going to let this painful, hard thing that happened to me be wasted. Rob Bell, years and years ago, had a great tour he did, and it was called Drops Like Stars. And it was about, suffering. And it was probably one of the most profound things that I've ever had exposure to. I went through it probably so many times. I watched the video over and over and over again when I went through my first divorce. Well, my only divorce, hopefully my only divorce still. When I went through a divorce, I was just absolutely broken. I mean, I just could not, what happened? And there was so many dynamics. I missed my wife and I was devastated that hadn't worked out. But I also felt this, well, what a waste of my time. And I also felt I was still a little bit Christian, and I felt, well, no one's going to want a Christian guy that's already been married, and there was all sorts of different things. And I was wrapped up in my ego and my ministry at a time. And I was like, oh, people are going to stop following me. Who wants to follow a Christian minister that's been divorced? They'll think badly of me. And so there's so many things wrapped up in that. But he helped me kind of see that it was what it was. And sometimes these things don't have a reason, but we give them a reason. And we look at that painful time, and we look at the harm that was done to us, and we say, that shit, that sucks, I hate it. But you know what? I'm not going to let it go to waste. I'm going to let that shape me, and I'm going to let that transform who I am today, so that the person that I am tomorrow is not going to be that same person. And the people around me are not going to be the same people that could do the things that happened to me before. I'm not going to surround myself with the same people. I'm going to learn lessons. I'm going to teach the opposite truths. I'm going to, like with the church thing, maybe you feel that purity culture is harmful. I'm going to speak out against purity culture. I'm going to help, mentor young people and give them great advice and help in navigating these complex issues without traumatizing them with really unhelpful beliefs. You can allow that stuff to shape you. Now, hear me right in this, okay? If you have a lot of adverse religious experiences or religious trauma, you want to be careful with this. I'm not advocating, if you have been really harmed by the church, that you go and spend hours a day trying to dig up, but where was it good? Please hear me right. This is maybe for work that is much further down the line for you, if ever. But it's maybe work for people that haven't been really heavily traumatized, okay? And so hear me right in this advice. I'm not advising that you go and sit and dig up old painful memories and sift through them for, a tiny little jewel. Like the truth is, we can look through the rubble for gems, but there's plenty of gems out there. So leave the rubble and move forwards, So I'm not saying that you have to do this. I'm not saying it's advisable if you have your own trauma and adverse experiences. It might be not very helpful for you. But it can be really helpful for a lot of people. It was very helpful for me. So I'm sharing from my own experience, and it's been very helpful for other people that I've worked with over the years. And so I know anecdotally for many people, this can be helpful as a process to redeem that past and to get over the regret and feeling that you wasted your time. So there are ways to navigate this, but I do think if you have religious trauma, if that sounds terrifying to you, or it sounds good in all the wrong ways, like going back to your abuser and saying they weren't so bad after all, that is not what I'm advocating. And honestly, to be honest, if that's where you're at, I would strongly advise you not to be doing this work on your own anyway. You really want to work with an expert. You want to work with a religious trauma expert, a therapist in CPTSD, someone that's trauma informed. There's trauma-informed coaches out there as well, if you can't find someone in your own state for therapy. And just be intentional about checking, they know what they're talking about. They seem genuine. They're good people. Maybe follow them online for a while and feel them out a bit. Reclamation Collective have a great directory of trauma-informed therapists. That's self-claimed trauma-informed therapists, so they haven't all been checked out individually and guaranteed to be that. And so obviously use some common sense and some just critique them and maybe check that they have the credentials they're saying they have. But there's plenty of people out there that want to help you. Laura Anderson has her Center for Recovery from Trauma. I can't remember if that's the actual name, something like that. Sorry, Laura. Brian Peck is out there. There's some great people. Andrew Curbs, who is Deconstruct Everything on Instagram. There's some amazing people out there that would love to help you. And honestly, this is a hard journey to do on your own if you're navigating some real trauma. And so be cautious with that. Please don't hear me say this and think I have to go back. It's the same thing that if I went through a very painful breakup with my divorce that happened, gosh, I don't know, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, some time ago. I went through that, and probably is, 7 years ago now, probably. You're just like, oh wow, it's a whole other life. I went through that, and that was really hard for me, but it wasn't specifically deeply traumatic. If anything, actually, the relationship in some ways was more traumatic for me. And that's not an indicator on anything to do with my ex-wife. She was wonderful in every way, but just the process of things that I learned and things that were brought up. But for me, it's been very helpful to look through that and to find the good in it and to kind of redeem that time in my life and not see it as a waste. That's been a helpful thing. But, I've got a friend who was in an abusive relationship, and his partner was very, very physically and emotionally abusive. And, when he broke up with her, I wouldn't have sat down with him and go, well, let's think about all the good things in that. Because, someone that's been in an abusive relationship does not need any help with that, right? Most people that are in abusive relationships end up in a cycle of, forgiving their partner, overly magnifying the tiny bits of good to outweigh the huge things that are negative and problematic, and things like that. So in the same way, that I wouldn't ever recommend someone that had been in a domestic abusive relationship to go back and think of all the good things, unless I was maybe a therapist or something. That might be some sort of technique or something. I don't know, right? So don't listen to me on stuff like that. I just wouldn't ever advise something like that. In the same way, if you've got deep religious trauma, I would not advise that step. It's more for the average Joe out there that has maybe no trauma, maybe he's had some adverse experiences, but they feel like, I could probably go through that and it wouldn't be an unhelpful practice for me. And so please bear that in mind. I know that was a huge disclaimer, but it's a really important disclaimer. And this shows the complexities and the nuances. I can find a question, and if I was talking to you one-on-one, I'd kind of know a bit about your story. I'd know about how you're navigating that, and I'd be able to give you a simple answer, maybe simple answers is probably a bit much for me. I'm very into the nuance and the gray, so black and white answers aren't common for me. But certainly when I'm talking on a podcast, I've got to think about all these different types of people. And even within those different types, there's so much diversity and different ways that people might explore some of these things. And so, you have to listen to you first. You've got to sit with maybe some of the advice or pointers that I've given and feel what feels right, what feels healthy, what feels good. If you have a therapist or someone that's really trained to walk alongside you with these things, sit with them. Maybe say, oh, I was listening to a podcast and it said maybe this would be a helpful exercise. Part of me is thinking it might be, but part of me is wondering if it would. What do you think? These are really important things for you to process, to navigate on your own. Now, I'm not saying you're on your own. I'm always here for you. And I know there's many people in this community that are here for you, that would love to listen and talk with you. You can message me on Instagram anytime, and I would love to chat with you and support you and listen in any way I can. You can, join a whole host of amazing online communities. There's a Patreon ones like for me, and Dirty Rotten Church Kids has one. There's Facebook groups like John Steingard's Wondrous Beings, your favorite heretics have a great Facebook group. There's lots of groups out there. And so, why did I bring up that? So my point, you're not alone. There's loads of people that want to rally around you and support you. But in a sense, you need to process some of these things on your own, internally. What do you feel about this? How are you going to navigate this? That's really what it boils down to. My answers are irrelevant. What I think about these questions is irrelevant. What's important is what you think about these questions. And so I encourage you, sit with that kind of stuff. When you hear answers given to you in this community by anyone, by me, anyone else, sit and think about it, question it, critique it. This journey of questioning and critical analysis and doubt, that hasn't ended. It's begun. The journey of leaving faith is not the end of your time of questioning things. It's the beginning of questioning things. And this is a lifelong process. And so please do that. Please exercise that. Never think I know all the answers or anything stupid like that, because I really don't know all the answers. I'm making most of this shit up as I go along. I only can talk from my experience and from what I've experienced, and maybe some stuff I've researched or some expert I talked to. But even then, right? How much a game of operator is it, right? Where, one person talks to another and they think, okay, they said that. And then they talk to another person and they talk to another. And before long, I'm giving absolutely useless information. So bear that in mind as well. I'm not the go-to guy that knows everything. Please don't ever think I do. All right, I think that's enough for today. I'm trying to keep these Q&As about an hour long and get 5, 6, 7 questions in there. So hopefully that was helpful for you. As I said, I'm always here in the DMs on Instagram. If you want to message me, I'm just at Phil Drysdale. If you want to connect with other people that are going through this process, I'd encourage you to check out the deconstructionnetwork.com, completely free. You can check if there's anyone in your area that's going through this and message them and see if you connect, see if you want to meet up or anything like that. Now that most of us can meet up in some way, shape or form, now people are vaccinated and the world seems to slowly kind of be normalizing, maybe. I don't know where you are in the world, but it feels like it's kind of getting more normal here. If you want to join my online community, if you want to support what I do, I really value anyone who supports me. What I do is for free. You never need to support me. I'm always here. I'm always happy to chat. I'm always willing to support you in any way I can. But the reason I can do that and the reason I can do it for free is because there's some amazing people out there that give to me on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, $5, $10, $50, whatever people feel they would like to do to support what I'm doing, to help me be able to release this stuff for free, to put resources in people's lives and support people and talk with people as they go through this. I really am committed to doing that for free. So many of us have been hurt by people in our conventional faiths that took advantage of us, that took our money for all sorts of weird and wonderful reasons. And a lot of them just needed to pay their own bills, But either way, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person that says, I will give to you if you give to me. So everything is always going to be free. But of course, I can only do that with amazing people that support what I'm doing. And so thank you to everyone that does do that. It means the world to me. It really does. You've no idea. Being able to do what I love and help people and pay the bills is a huge deal. And as you can imagine, this isn't a huge bill earner. You know, people don't make a lot of money, you know, unraveling people's faith. And so I really do appreciate it, and I love all of you. So if you wanna support me, you can do that at patreon.com/PhilDrysdale or phildrysdale.com/partner. You get access to our online community. We do monthly Zooms, we do regular audio calls and things like that. But yeah, I love you all. I really appreciate you all. I know this is a hard journey you're going on. I know that there's so much going on right now, and the world is a complex place. Life is complex. You've got your own stuff you're dealing with, and deconstruction in the midst of it all. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff to be going through. And so you're doing great. I'm proud of you all. You will get there. I really do believe that. And so hang in there, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace. If you are deconstructing, there is no reason to do this alone. It can be an incredibly lonely process, but the deconstructionnetwork.com is a free resource to help you find others deconstructing in your local area. If you would like to support what I do, everything I do is for free, from talking to people for hours on end to producing resources and podcasts. It is only possible because people give generously. There's never any need to give. It will always be free, everything I do. But if you do, we do have an amazing private community group that we talk on over on Discord, that you would gain access to. And we do regular audio and video chats on there as well. So it'd be great to see you in there. But of course, never any requirement. And of course, please, please, please come and talk to me on Instagram. I love connecting with people. I love helping people on their journey. If you need a safe space to process your deconstruction, I would love to connect. It's just at Phil Drysdale. Love every one of you. Peace.